Alright, still kind of sick, but all pilled up and just ready to go. Leaves no excuse to not listen to new music that comes out, pretty much. After riding high off of the critical acclaim of his 2020 record, Abel Tesfaye, known to everyone as The Weeknd, has returned with what could be a sellout record, except he looks damn good doing it. As all things, as the king of existential fuckboys, just lets out banger after banger and it doesn't seem like he's ever going to stop and that nothing's ever going to change. This is another album review of Media Mentality. Dawn FM is Weeknd's fifth full-length LP. He had a huge string of mixtapes, and he's basically always been an enigmatic superstar in the underground scene, and then he just took over radio waves by storm and is basically was the first megastar musical hit of the COVID era of music. And he'd been talking about a follow-up record to After Hours 2020 for a while. I think a lot of people were expecting him to drop it in late 2021. He had been bringing it up since around August or so. And here we are with Dawn FM, and I have to say that it's clearly his most upbeat and bouncy and very kinetic record. It's even more Daft Punk than Starboy was for the first half. It's about 4 or so songs that are just straightforward, reminiscent of what you would want to call Random Access Memories Part 2. It's just that funky, upbeat clicking and bass and rhythm guitar. It's very reminiscent of what Silk Sonic did very recently, and probably what I was expecting from that group. But here he does it, I think, a little more tighter and more flamboyant, just pulling from that soul and funk era, along with that 80s aesthetic that he's been trying to blend together to create a new type of R&B genre for the last couple of years and really solidifying it on After Hours. And while this feels like sort of a departure also because of how upkeep the tempo is, it definitely feels like its own thing more than a part two of After Hours, and hardly even connective in that way beyond that this existentialism and darkness of partying and being left alone and figuring all that out is still throughout this record. Here, though, there's more of a concept album with Jim Carrey, of all people, being a radio host in different snippets, which creates this very nostalgic sense of dread and sort of, I think, lends itself to a metaphor of life in general, or maybe when you party and fuck and drug your way through it as some sort of lack of fulfilling purgatory as you get closer and closer each day, growing older, getting closer to death. There's a lot of talk about the afterlife on this record, and the radio snippets make me think of what I think poor Kid Cudi wanted to do with his Beavis and Butthead snippets and just absolutely didn't happen on Speeding Bullet to Heaven. But I think as we get more and more records like this, that's just an encapsulation of the party era and the party age that Weeknd is. You know, I'm part of it as well, just that millennialdom of doing drugs and hooking up and being afraid of commitment and intimacy, or trying really hard once you get very euphoric, and just traversing relationships and trusting other people with your heart and your emotions and your feelings. It's very difficult, and though Weeknd has now done it about 8 or 9 times in only a span of a decade, it has not gone away resonating with people, as there's so many other artists out there that have continued the same thematic search that he has as well. But where he separates himself, where I think a lot of the more upbeat and funky and super catchy pop tracks on here, and that includes the entire front half: Gasoline, How Do I Make You Love Me, Take My Breath, Sacrifice, and then a little bit of Out of Time. All those remind me of what, like, the Jonas Brothers have mostly been failing to accomplish. A little bit of Charlie Puth, except poor guy doesn't have half the amount of charisma as The Weeknd does, so there's that. And then things change a little bit with Here We Go Again, featuring Tyler, the Creator, which he belts out the line, "You're gonna sign that prenup," which automatically suddenly makes me feel like the whole song is if Kanye West produced a Donda version of Gold Digger. Best Friends and Is There Someone Else slows things down, and we get slower and slower as the album progresses, because I guess I feel like it's a pretty good aspect of dying or you can't party as hard as you used to anymore. And it's almost like the entire album itself is aging as you listen throughout the entire 50 minutes and 16 songs on this whole record. A few snippet tracks instead of actual songs, but it still, I think, formulates well better than expected for a lot of people. It is more conceptual than any of his other records previously, from what I can recall. I think the big issue here is that he's finally combining, I think, his two biggest fascinations, which is emotion and death. And he is showing it through partying till the end, trying to relax and gather yourself as you're about to die, knowing you're about to die, not wanting to relinquish all of the effort you put into every failed relationships before, and being resentful and some visceral anger in a lot of the songs, but in just such a like very overly tragic Shakespearean way through the modern R&B pop dance lens. And to hammer home the Shakespeareanism, I guess, is the Jim Carrey basically gives us a poem about it's okay to die in the last track. Some of the songs are kind of short, and the only song I really hate is I Heard You're Married with Lil Wayne, because Lil Wayne ruins it. He does. They have auto-tuned him to shit because he can't sing at all. He, I guess, can barely rap. I don't know why his rapping is auto-tuned, but it doesn't sound good. He sounds like he doesn't know where he is. It's a weird separation of having just two guest features, and you have Tyler Creator at the height of his youth movement and trying to find his own version of rap and R&B, and then Lil Wayne, who was considered the greatest rapper of the 2000s for a long time, who seems to just be drowning in obscurity or irreverentness, but it's just there, you know. But that song doesn't really detract a lot from the whole experience of the record, which is pretty amazing, and something about it being at the very beginning of the year kind of sets a tone and mood of everything we've just gone through in the past year, 2 years, and sort of an ominous, worrying, but we're still going to be all right even if it is bad feeling of what's to come. It's just the perfect first record of the year, kind of. And so I think I'm going to give it a pretty solid 8.5, because this is one of the few records where I think all the snippets and skits work to its advantage, and it creates a theme that I think is very easy to grab onto and is very obviously there. He has mastered emotional conveying on his part, and all you have to do is soak it up. That's it for this one. I hope you enjoy it, and like, share, subscribe. And as always, thank you for listening. Have a good night.